Add another story. This is on the front page of the Standard. At the very top there, EACC raids governor's home in 2 billion Kenya shilling fraud probe. A detective searched the current home of Samburu Governor Moses Renol Kulal and the residence of other county officials. If you want the finer details, you can just turn to page 10 of the Standard. Governor's residence searched in Graft Probe is the title there. A picture of the governor's residence in Karen, and of course a police officer standing guard as EACC officials make their way into that premises. So Irungu, Graft Purge at the counties as well. Link it to what the president had to say yesterday and how you feel, whether you think Kenya is headed in the right direction.
Keeping in mind that the governor has a function today. Again,
yes, which the press has been invited to cover.
So I think, first of all, Trevor and Wahiga, good morning. I think the first thing is, for me, is really that I think what the president is actually saying, and I guess to give us the context. Context is not just the Samburu governor. It is 4 cabinet ministers who are being probed very personally for corruption scandals. It is also a deputy president who is being asked to either pay for or give back stolen property in the context of the Western Hotel. So this corruption scandal is very real and is probably in about 6 pages of each of these newspapers. So I think you have to see this in this context. What I think the president is saying is that he's not going to protect anybody. That's one side of things. That's one side of it. The other side that is not so stated is that he's giving green light to the investigative agencies, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, who are involved in these investigations, but also the Directorate, the Director of Criminal Intelligence or Investigation, as well as the ODPP, that if there is sufficient evidence that very powerful people in the administration are I guess, to be put on their defense, that they will be done, that this will happen. And I think that's important at this time. I think it's important for the chief executive, as head of the cabinet, to say none of my cabinet members will be spared the investigations of these independent institutions. Otherwise, those independent institutions will back off.
But my brother, you know very well that we are not telling the president to do the prosecution. No, he doesn't have that. He's the head of the executive. What he just needs to say that anybody in my team who has been mentioned should give way. So what he does is he brings in other Kenyans who have not been adversely mentioned. That does not mean it is judgmental. And then he says, let the other organs of government, including the judiciary, take their functions while I perform duties of government with people who are of no questionable record. That's all the president should do. And, he's not doing it. He's only threatening, but still these guys remain. And as Trevor has said, so maybe the president is going to attend another function which has a governor that has been adversely mentioned. You know what? I tweeted yesterday that corruption in Kenya smells more, very badly, more than the worst kept mortuary in the whole world. The worst kept, the worst maintained mortuary, smells better than corruption in Kenya. So this is really worrying.
Let me come back to you. See, so on the issue of the Jubilee administration, there have been 2 administrations. How many purges have we had of the cabinet?
Since probably what year?
Since, well, there's 2 administrations, right? So the first one and the second administration.
Okay.
One of the things that I think has plagued this administration is its inability to recruit and maintain people of integrity in the cabinet or at the level of the principal secretaries. And we know this. We have seen many of them go. If we were to count them, there would be quite a few. Many of them have left, have gone into court, and their cases are either still running or they have been cleansed by the court and they have come out. But the point that I'm making, I think, is that there is something that is, maybe it's your mortuary anecdote, there is something, there is something very dangerous with corruption, that it seems to just seep in, a bit like a cancer or a virus, within public institutions. And I think, the place to look for that probably is in the vetting process, because I think one of my things I was very critical about last year, when the new cabinet was appointed, was whether they were going to be vetted anew, whether there were lifestyle audits that were done and they were made public. We saw a round of lifestyle audits last year that were never made public. And I think that's where the problem lies. It doesn't lie in the individual executive position. I think the statement, you can't disagree with the statement. I think, in fact, you just agreed with it.
Yes.
What you're saying is he's not going far enough.
Yes,
yeah.
That's correct.
What is your take on, you've said that's one problem, but others say the other problem we have is that the corruption axe is being swung in certain directions only. Do you feel the same? And Teresa, maybe I could start with you.
Okay, I think there's that perception because of the number of cases and how they're handled. Okay, we've had issues of some are arrested like on a Friday, you stay over for the weekend. Some you're given the dignity of a few hours and you're out. You know, there's that debate. So there's that perception that Kenyans have that the axe is not cutting equally. But I think I want to pick up from where Irungu has left on at the point of recruitment or at the point of appointing the cabinet secretaries. Do we do the right thing? So that if you even got the process wrong, then at what point do you say, okay, now you're on your own, you know? Like, is it like you set them up, knowing very well this is, sorry, a thief, and you're like, here, there's some gold, and you know, get them there, and then when they steal, you're like, oh, by the way, you're on your own, you know? So I think we need to get the appointment process right. The Constitution is very clear on what criteria, in terms of even representation, which is something that, I mean, civil society, even the general public speaks about it. But if every time you do it with impunity, then why can't they just emulate you? We say a leader is what you are. You model what you want.
But also there's a bigger crisis than what he's putting. The people who vet, who chooses the people who vet. Sometimes some of these cabinet ministers...
Those who vet.
Those who vet.
The veterans. The veterans.
And then sometimes they end up in parliament. If you look at the law that he tries to implement Chapter 6 of the Constitution, the Elections Act and so on, you know, which all feed onto Chapter 6 of the Constitution. You know, if Chapter 6 of the Constitution on integrity and leadership is really implemented, in fact, 90% of the people in parliament will not make it. They should not be members of parliament. And these are the people who get presidential appointees. And you know, they pass laws. A lot of people are talking about the referendum. Right now,
since you're a professor, by 90%, you mean 9 out of 10 MPs that we meet?
Yes. They will not qualify. They will not qualify. You have seen all sorts of scandals, swinging left and right, people protecting each other. But because the law on the implementation of the Constitution, Article 73 onwards, which is Chapter 6, is weak, and it was deliberately made weak to accommodate certain interests, and now you're starting to see the impact of that kind of thing. What we're supposed to do, Waiga and my colleagues here, is that we need to relook. People are rushing to the referendum. The biggest problem in Kenya is not this constitution. The biggest problem is that the laws that have been passed through legislation to implement the constitution are weak. If you ask me, I would say, to hell with the referendum. Let us go back and look at the laws that implement this constitution and see whether we have implemented the constitution according to the requirements of the constitution or not. So the people
before we try and think of a new constitution.
We think of a new constitution. This constitution is in trouble because of parliamentary legislation. And so you have people who are corrupt, vetting other corrupt people, and then you come up with a cabinet which is corrupt. The president looks helpless. But for his docket, we want him to bite and then say, okay, I'm not responsible for this legislation. But now you have been mentioned, and this, I'm not the one mentioning you. While you are cleaning your face, you are cleaning your stinking socks. Let me try and bring in the people with the clean socks.
One of the last times I was here at Citizen was, you know, we launched a campaign called the Red Card Campaign. I don't know if you remember this, back in 2017, around about April. It was a 90-day campaign. And what we basically tried to put before the nation was that there is no legal or there's no legal standard for the interpretation, or judicial standard for the interpretation of Chapter 6.
Yes.
You know, is it when you are mentioned? Is it when you are prosecuted? Is it when you're convicted? Or is it when you've lost your appeal? And I think the problem is that the Supreme Court, which still has that petition from a number of us, is that petition has really not been heard and determined to a point that we understand what is the judicial standard. And I think until that issue is there, the point that Prof is raising, I think will still be a story.
Still be a sticking point.
All right, absolutely.
Just before we take a break, I think one of the institutions I always mention every time I get the opportunity, I always say, if IBC could just do what they need to do at the point of elections.
If they had done what they needed to do,
we would not be here. And I think, because I've had this narrative, oh, the citizens are the ones who voted for these members of parliament. But when I go to the ballot box, and these are the people who are there, I either vote and, what do you call it, commit to my citizen duty to vote, or I walk out. But at the same time, you're like, okay, let me just try and choose whatever that is there. So if that institution can help us with Chapter 6 from the beginning, okay, of course, now we are not going for elections, but I mean, the next institution in charge of elections, if you're not fit to run for any seat, please
should be
do not
stopped from the onset.
From the onset.
Okay.
And lastly, what Nrungu just said, you know, when we were dealing with the Obado case, and the first thing, I went to my chair and I was like, are you saying he's going to be a governor still, even with this case? You know, like when we're doing the Sharon case. And she said, yes, as Kenya, we set the precedent.
Yeah.
That you say you're not, you know, like the word literal meaning of you're not guilty until proven guilty. But at the same time, what does it mean for us? Can't you even just step aside?
Okay,
you
fair
know,
enough.
for
All right.
certain issues?
Yeah, we